Welcome in Smite Minds of all kinds to the SPL powered by Alienware. My name is Finch, and boy, have we had an excellent season here so far. And part of the reason we've got to have a season that's so incredible is because we have indeed partnered with Alienware as part of Season 8. If you want to check out their products, I suggest you go give them a follow over on Twitter and on Instagram. They're at Alienware, and join the global community, see if maybe you get some giveaways and that kind of stuff too. Find out all kind of cool stuff you can use to power your home setup. So not only do we get to have all this kind of cool Season 8 stuff, but you even get to get maybe a bit of an upgrade if you can make that happen. Let's go ahead, though, and start talking about the matches we have coming up here today, and even maybe the league in general. I've got Goremizer here with me, and Gore, Leviathans Warriors, that's going to be the matchup we'll be talking about here in just a couple minutes. I think that even though Leviathans are up at the top right now and Warriors have struggled, I think we've got ourselves a really good set coming up.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what this one's going to bring because the Warriors have been on the rise, and that's kind of what I continue to expect, right? You look down, they're 1-3. Granted, the entire bottom half of the league is 1-3, right? Some of that's going to change,
Yes.
I think, a little bit later, or has potential to change a little bit later. Scarabs will be playing. The only two teams that can affect their fate today is going to be the Warriors and the Scarabs. So the Warriors, though, have been not even, I want to say, steadily on a climb. As you can see, they lost to the Bolts a little bit earlier. They still have a lot of things they want to work out, but they're very cognizant of it. You know, anytime they lose a set, you can go onto Twitter, guaranteed, and you're going to see them all tweeting, like, this is what we did wrong, this is what we're going to do about it. Like, they know what they need to work on, and admittedly, even though it was a 2-0, they looked pretty good against the Bolts in that set. So I have some high hopes for them here. I don't think the Leviathans are going to make it easy on them by any means, but I do think this is a good chance to kind of show that they are improving.
Yeah, it is going to be a tough one, though, Gore. I think you're right to point that out, kind of no matter how you look at it. Just going to be a tough one for them to overcome what the Leviathans have done at this point. But I think the Warriors have the tools. Let's talk a little bit about what this Warriors team does well. And I think it's the ability to bring together the PK mindset. That's the Neo Ma Kivo Fred part. And then this SSG mindset, those two old teams that have formed the whole of kind of being perfectly willing to wait to the late game and try and dominate those late game fights. And in particular, who do you have rotating out of the ADC role and then swinging? It's Vote.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to see what they're going to do with Vote over here. This on her, like, I feel like you're going to see quite a few on her clips. Did bring out an Uller at one point. Don't know if we're going to get to see that one again as much. But the fact that they have been willing to play it and kind of looking at it, like, Onher's been big, but Chernobog, I mentioned the Uller, like, they've been very flexible over there for Vote. And so I'm a little more excited to see what Vote is going to bring out today, not just in terms of picks, but his playstyle. There was a moment, and people were talking about it specifically up against the Bolts, a rotation that Vote had made where if he had maybe run with his team to the Phoenix directly as opposed to taking a kind of safer route, maybe they could have won a game right there and pushed it to 3. I want to see if he makes some of those adjustments, what his positioning's like today, especially because he's going up against Yarkor. Like, it's not going to be an easy lane by any means. Yarkor has been standing up to the best of the best and still knocking him down.
Yeah, might as well keep talking about Yarkor over there on the Leviathans. He said, listen, I think I could play any role this season, and he's decided to make it ADC. They've moved on from Nentroid with Julio over to solo, and that has allowed for Yarkor to look pretty darn comfortable over there in the long lane, taking fights with guys that have been doing it for potentially half a decade longer, and he doesn't seem to be perturbed by that at all, even up against Vote, who I think is one of the very best that we have out of the ADC position. I don't think Yarkor is going to be shying away at all.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen him too many times kind of literally step up to people who we think that, admittedly, like, look, you're a fresh, quote-unquote, fresh hunter in the league, right? Like, he got to play last year, and we always talked about it, how this squad has had a lot of confidence about them, right? That's just part of the air. That's part of the charm, honestly, that makes it fun to either root for them or against them to certain extents, depending on which side you fall on. And it kind of came down. We didn't know how Yarkor was going to look. We didn't expect it to be bad, but we were just like, okay, question marks, what's going to happen here? Yarkor has been looking not unstoppable, but really difficult to handle just in lane. Really good at these teamfight translations into the late game. And so I really do enjoy watching this. And I think, honestly, this is going to be one of those matchups where the duo lane is crucial to win. I mean, Neil with Vote going up against Yarkor and Rong Yu, whoever takes control over there could take control of the match.
Yeah, I think this Leviathans frontline duo is second, likely only to the Dragons, and even then, just barely. Very, very close in strength. We're talking, though, about Yarkor and what he can do out of the ADC roles. Let's go ahead and bring Yarkor in, see if we can hit him up for this pre-game interview. Yarkor, man, I know you said you were confident in your ability to play ADC this season, but I got to ask you, are you at least surprised a little bit about how good you have looked so far over there? You look like you've been doing it your whole life.
I think I've been just having fun, to be honest. I've been just playing the game and having fun. I think that what really matters.
It's been super fun to watch you, I guess, because of that. But I am a little worried. Like, we're focusing a lot on your matchup and like dealing with Vote, but kind of the void you're leaving. Julio has filled that slot in solo really well, but going up against Nico, like the Warriors have looked really good, putting him onto like assassins and things like that. How do you think the solo lane's going to look this set?
I think Julio will be fine. I think Julio is a beast in his role too. So I think it would be an interesting match to see in the dual lane and in the solo lane. So
Well, right now you all have only lost to the Dragons, and you all looked competitive in that set as well. Yarkor just couldn't quite get it done. I got to assume right now the goal for you is to beat everyone else and make it back to the Dragons. Are they someone that you guys kind of want to rematch with and see if you can maybe get that win against them and finally knock them down?
yeah, yesterday was a bad day for sure. Yesterday it wasn't our day. It was like so many like unlucky things that happened that could like make you been into a game three. But yeah, sometimes it's just don't go your way. So I would love to play against them because I think they are the best team right now. So
Yeah, I know that you guys are. We cannot wait for another one of those matchups. But you guys got the Warriors you're playing today. Good luck in that matchup, Yarkor. Thanks for giving us some of your time, and go ahead and start getting things ready.
thank you.
Well, Yarkor, you can kind of hear it, man, in his voice. His mind and that team's mind is a bit set on eventually getting that Dragons matchup, but they have some other teams to get through before they can do it.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and take a look, though, now that we're talking a little bit about these teams, at some of their jerseys. Here is the J Dragons one. Thank you to Mike Splat26 for showing us one of the cutest things I've seen in a long time. It's been a miserable couple of years with what's been happening in the world. Things like this, though, just pure injections of joy right into my veins. If you want to enjoy some of this as well, then make sure you check out InsideApparelShop.SmiteProLeague.com. Pick up your own favorite jerseys. It doesn't have to be Jade Dragons. Maybe you're a Leviathans fan or a Warriors fan. Grab the one that you want and start representing your team in style. Gordo, you got any kind of closing thoughts on that interview from Yarkor? I feel like we got kind of towards the end there. A pretty honest read on how this team's feeling.
Yeah, what I think I heard, and this is something I think that's the most important, right? It's kind of the connotation underneath. Like, you can hear what he's saying, like, yesterday wasn't a great day for us, we can be better, we will do better. And that's kind of what I'm getting out of it, is that there's a flame that has been ignited under them. Like,
yes.
You're able to come through, the worst set they've had up to this point was getting pushed 3 by the Kings until yesterday. Losing is a different experience, and I feel like that's kind of, again, something to say, like, man, you know what? We've been coasting through. We haven't had that many issues. Oh no, now we've just got 2-0'd? Okay, we're going to crush anything that stands in our way until we can get back to the point where we're able to beat the Dragons. So I really like the way the Leviathans, at least to me, look like they're trying to tackle the future here, because it feels like they not want nothing other than to be the number 1 team.
That's what they want, man. You kind of heard them say they're the best team right now. That's until they get their crack at them again. It could potentially change it. But that's all in the future. Right now, in the here and now, they've got to deal with Cuvo, Fred, with Dardes out of this middle lane. And Gora, I think he's going to be a critical part of this matchup. I don't know if I'm a little out of pocket here, but I don't know that we have completely seen Dardes at 100% just yet. Really, this entire team at 100% just yet. And I think him getting into that rhythm and kind of being the spearhead for the squad, as sometimes he is, could be really critical for them today.
Look, all throughout last year, Shinto versus Dardes, I think, was one of my favorite mid-lane matchups to be able to see. There's a lot of really good mid-lane matchups in the league, but being able to watch pretty much any of them at any given time is going to feel solid. And now we're at a position where I feel like every single one of these is crucial, but you had highlighted like Cuvo going up against Panatom, and how those mids fuse with their jungles is going to maybe be even more important. The synergy still kind of building between Cuvo and Dardes versus what already exists there for Shinto and Panatom. I think there's going to be a lot of questions of god pools. I mean, I had mentioned it. I think we were talking about it in the SCC. Panatom, he plays he has a lot of setup gods. He has a lot of carry gods. But things like the Nemesis last year didn't necessarily look too good. But I think I've seen him go to it a few times this year. We haven't seen his Thor that often yet. Like, there's a lot of options still open for the Leviathans, and yesterday they had focused a lot on the Daji. They played the Awelish as well, so they're willing to branch out, but I think those are going to be the contended picks throughout all of this. Those junglers are crucial for this game.
Yeah, and I didn't particularly love the dodgy look for Panatom. I think he'd agree. There were some times where he was a bit lost in that game. Panatom is at his best when he's able to help Shinto sort of get ahead in that middle lane and then play these sort of initiator pace setter gods for the team, where really his initial role isn't even to be the one finishing things off, but to get things started, and that can set up for the rest of the squad, like Shinto and Yarkor, to move in. But it's these warriors that I have a big focus on, because they're still the ones that I think have got to find some kind of way to get a little bit of momentum going, to find a way to see what victory looks like for this team. We still do not have a consistent picture of what this team is going to do to beat other high-level teams. So we are into the picks and bans now here for game number 1. Leviathans have that first pick position, and I think they'll be using this to for sure grab some top-tier picks. This team is not hiding what their ideas and strats are. They're going to take the very best available in slot, and everyone knows it whenever they have a chance to pick.
Like, I'll just scroll over. I haven't put this week's data into it yet, but when I go, let's look at their top picks. Set 4 times, Heimdall 3 times, Onher 3 times, Tiamat 3 times. Like, literally, I'm just reading off a tier list. I could open up Reddit right now and probably find all of those gods gravitating towards the top. Like you said, it's anything but telegraphed. I guess they really are trying to let it be known out there, but they're not going out and telling everybody. It's just that they don't care about hiding it. And they said this last year. I mean, in interviews all the time we'd ask them, and they just said, you know what we're going to play. We're just going to beat you with it until you take care of it, and then we're going to pick something else and beat you with that. They will go down the tier list, and they will play it at a high level, and it's so difficult to deal with them.
Well, I'm seeing the Sobek and the Amir bans, and I'm thinking if you're playing up against Wrong You, then if I'm the only Warriors, I want there to be a Yemoja ban as well. I don't know. He's been so good on it. I'd be really surprised if the Leviathans were to ban it in this spot. Try and force the Warriors to. And if they don't, I think that he's the best player of it in the league right now. And he should try and take it every chance he can get. He's such a dominant factor on this pick. And then it makes sense. They ban the Guan Yu, and now the Warriors, I think, have some pressure on them to do it. But then think about it. Even if they don't ban Yemoja, there's so much that's still available right now with how strong sort of the first 20 or so picks are right now in the SPL that we see kind of in and out. And then in those last few picks, we'll see kind of some other ones shift in and out. But there are a clear top class, I feel like, in those picks right now that we almost always see get taken.
No matter what, the Leviathans are going to be able to scoop anything up that they want. Set being banned here, I think, leaves a lot open. First off, even though it literally was the first thing that I just wrote off and said, and it was one of the top bans that the Dragons had against the Leviathans yesterday, so they definitely are good to take care of it, but it leaves up so much for... I mean, there's so many good gods, which
maybe
theoretically...
Honor, maybe Yemoja...
I mean, Tiamat, technically, like, I mean, if you want to swing her in here, I really am curious what Shinto could do with her. But the thing that really is standing out to me is that, yes, you get Tiamat, the Oni Warriors get any 2 of the others that are left on the field, and that's really good for them.
They're going to prioritize the King Arthur, get Nika comfortable in solo right away, and yes, I think you must, if you're given the opportunity, take Yemoja out of Wrong Yu's hands. That's a tough call, man. Do you want to go with this Tiamat right out of the gate? This team is really confident in how strong Tiamat is. I think they did say she might be a little overvalued, but here they are, taking her first overall. They still have a chance to come back, though, and grab on her in response and another strong support. But, man, it's tough not having that Yemoja in Wrong Yu's hands. They're going to have to find a way to slow Neomod down on a god that is strong right from the beginning of the game all the way up to the end of it.
What I think is good, though, is when I think of Neil, like, Yemoja isn't really one of the first. Like, he has a good Yemoja, but that's not necessarily where my mind drifts to for his god pool. And so this is a solid pick for the Warriors, but at the same time, it does feel a little bit like they are just using that as a temporary 4th ban, right, to keep it out of the hands of the Leviathans. And like you said, it's a difficult decision, I think, for the Leviathans to make, getting something for Wrong Yu. He loves his Horus as well. I think we got to see that last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. It's been really fun to watch what he's able to do, but they pick up Tier on her, I don't think we have to have any conversations. I think half of the on her highlights we had at the very beginning of this were Yarkor, and as well as Tier. Julio's Tier has been noted on and talked about for years. We've gotten to see a few of that, or a few plays of that in the SPL. But I think if Shinto says, whatever Shinto says he wants, you lock it in. If he says, you know what, I can do well with Tiamat, it honestly gets like the hairs on my neck standing up because I'm just excited to see what he can do with it, because he's one of the guys that, you give him something like Persephone and it just looks absolutely insane. You give him something that theoretically just should not be good. I would argue he is one of the strongest mid laners we have, and because of the core 3v3 around him, it looks even better. And so now it's the strengths of, whatever jungle, whatever support they do lock in here for the Leviathans after the next set of bans, that's going to be what really either sets Shinto apart or pulls him back.
It's the Morgan for Dardes, though, and that is scary if you're the Leviathans. We've seen Morgan transformations, I think, from Dardes into the on-her in the early game to give that on-her presence in mid, and it sets up for buff invades. It gives kill potential right off the bat. As soon as this Morgan hits level 5, she's got good options. Doesn't have to be that on-her, but we have seen that recently be a dominant force. So as you said, still support and jungle missing for the Leviathan, still jungle and ADC missing for the Warriors. So the Leviathans ban away the Camazotz, but I mean, even Heimdall still opens some great options for them over in the ADC role if they instead would have come down to the Chernabog, perhaps. So going to be tough to completely ban them out of that role at this point for the Leviathans, but maybe just go ahead and take one away like that Heimdall and try and limit them at least a little bit.
Yeah, try to lock them down. I mean, no matter what they get, having the Morgan on the other side, especially like you said for Dardes, like, he's one of the best on her mids. I think the last time we saw him in a matchup like this, he spent the first 10-15 minutes of the game transforming into on her, so if Yarkor does well over there against Vote, then that's an easy pickup, and you had called that one there, the Heimdall that you had wanted to see. Trying to limit Vote is only going to work so far, though. I mean, some of the highlights we saw, he was playing Uller, he was playing Jingwei, you had highlighted Chernabog, Apollo's still available, even though some of those have received nerfs. Like, I feel like pretty much any single one of them is going to be solid, and if you're looking for safety, I mean, there's nowhere else to go other than Jingwei.
It's safety with a guaranteed strong late game as long as she can make it to that point. I think it is worth noting once more that, again, Loki cannot be played at this point.
Yep.
Had to be kind of taken away for a moment, but there is currently a fix working for him, so you should expect him to be back with that next update that's coming back, so don't expect him to be gone too long. And Gore, this is what you were saying, Wrong You, a comfortable Horus player here at this point right? At every point in his career, and very much willing to try and pick this one up. It does mean he has to be really, really aggressive, and maybe they even lose a little bit in the late game in terms of those Guardian base stats, but certainly a pick that could be strong.
I mean, Horus is one of my favorite supports to play, and honestly, I'll admit it was because I watched Wrong You play it so much last year that I had to go in and learn it, because it's just, he just plays so, not even different. He plays exactly the way that you feel as a Guardian. Like you said, you're a little squishier, and I'm excited to see what he can do. Pressure-wise, on her Horus versus Yamoja Jingwei, I don't know that they're going to have a lot early on, but once he gets that prot shred, it's going to be really helpful against the Yamoja, the King Arthur, now this Osiris as well, in terms of helping keep them locked down a little more consistently.
Yeah, providing maybe a little bit of anti-heal. Not a little bit of it, but that it might be a little bit effective. Not a ton of healing over for the Leviathans that you're super scared of. This Horus, though, does provide some knockups. That's a pretty big deal for this Awelish. On her can as well. Tiamat can. So this Awelish has some good inherent synergy with this composition, and then can maybe even punish someone like the Jingwei, who's a little bit reliant on those occasionally throughout the draft. So I think the Awelish pick makes some sense, but with this draft core, I'm thinking they're going to have to hit the gas pedal early. Is that your read on this one, too?
Yeah, honestly, I mean, when you have tier Horus, like, a lot of this seems like they want to get aggressive. I think they can translate decently to the late game. Like, Awelish hits pretty hard. Tiamat, we've seen what she can do. The longer the game goes, the harder the damage hits.
Yeah.
But I feel like they are going to be riding the wave with Wrong You, right? His spikes are going to be the peaks of the Leviathans here. But I'm really excited for it because a lot of the gods that they've locked in are gods that have been banned away from them for specific reasons. The tier, the Awelish, and the Horus have all come through. Horus, not so much in Season 8. That's a Season 7 thing. But the Awelish was banned yesterday, played once yesterday as well. Tier, I mean, literally, it's so difficult to talk about anything when Julio is playing tier because he manages to look so good. And that's why I have to look at the other side, and I'll admit I'm a little confused just because, you know, we've seen Osiris jungle before. We've seen it work. We've seen it fail. We've seen it flounder. And so I'm really curious what Cuvo has in mind for this. The slows will be nice, but A lot of people on the Leviathans have escaped, so looking for like just that setup potential is not going to be there. And so the only thing I can maybe assume is the scaling, especially into the late game, how tanky you're going to be, and how, just frontline heavy, especially if Morrigan transforms into another one of them. You get 2 Yamojas, 2 King Arthurs, 2 Osirises, a Tyr on your side or a Horus on your side. All of a sudden, your team's just not going to die. Granted, that puts a lot of weight on Devote to carry off, and then, okay, boo-hoo, Dardes has to transform into On Her a Wheelish or Tiamat. Like, no matter what, I think the Warriors are in a really good position to take those 5-on-5 groupings, and so it's going to be up to the Leviathans to get a lead to make sure that they can make that even.
Yeah, those late game transformations, not even late game, I think right from the beginning, as soon as Changeling comes
level
up,
5.
who he picks and how he uses it, that's going to be critical. This is a big game for Wrong Yu, though, too. 6 Guardians went off the board before he made his support selection, and really only Warriors spent 4 of their 5 bans on him. If he can prove that he can just fall back on this Horus without a really big drop-off in terms of his impact in the games, I think that's going to be really big for this Leviathans team going forward, because clearly the Warriors are a bit worried about my man getting to play just about any Guardian. We'll get to see how it works, though. Leviathans and the Oni Warriors. Game 1, let's get into the action.
The Leviathans might have their eyes set on a rematch with the Dragons, but they've got to make their way through the Oni Warriors and the rest of the league first. My name is Dolson. Agro's with me. Doug, working the cameras for game number 1 and 2 and maybe 3 of the Leviathans versus the Oni Warriors. Agro's all but a Twitter meme yesterday, right, when we were talking to PBM about whether or not Wrong Yu would play this Horus, and it's not a meme anymore. Wrong Yu, with so many Guardians taken away in picks and bans, goes towards Horus in game 1.
And it fits exactly what the Leviathans want to do. Yesterday they found far more success playing up against the Dragons with the Sobek-Awilix combination. Not available here, so instead they go towards the Horus, which still has that knockup, still has great roam potential, still has great setup potential. I think it fits perfectly to what the Leviathans are looking to do here in this game. I'm just a little bit worried about how they scale in this one, Dave. I mean, Julio on Tyr, lane dominant, total lane bully, but come late game, everyone's got beads, everyone's got some CC immunity. Doesn't become that scary. All of his damage is built into that CC. Panatom on the Awilish, early game leaning. Shinto scales well, but Wrong Yu and Yarkor more focused on the early to mid game in the lane. Leviathans showed us yesterday that they can get those leads, but now they've got to teach us that they can convert on them as well.
Oh, big double knockup from Wrong Yu there. Get Neomod down to beneath half HP, and then the follow-up re-engage. Neo has to use the beads, yes, that's beads, on the Emoja to start off. Beads for all 5 members of the Oni Warriors at minute 0 of this game. So the onslaught of CC is probably, or not probably, it is something that the Oni Warriors are a little bit concerned about. One thing I kind of latched onto there, Aggro, Julio feeling like maybe a lane bully here on this tier, but he's got to go up against Nika right on this King Arthur, the King Arthur and the tier. Maybe a similar mindset in our eyes. Is that a matchup where they both have the ability to lane bully, but there's still more engaging happening over in duo lane? Riptide out and away keeps Numa alive, but my goodness, the onslaught of this Horus and On Her is just nonstop.
Yeah, if you're not dashing in and jumping in as Horus On Her, you're doing something wrong. So I think that Wrong Yu and Yarkor are definitely doing the right thing by playing up and aggressive. And as far as the solo lane matchup goes, I really expect Tyr to get the better end of the clear potential. Arthur has a lot of buttons and does a lot of damage and moves around a whole lot, but Tyr is very straightforward. He's going through the wave, and he's clearing it pretty much instantly, and he's got a really big heal, and that heal ends up being super important up against gods like Arthur that are usually pretty good at poking you down and doing their damage over a longer period of time. Power Cleave is going to remedy a lot of issues for that lane for Julio.
That's already a pretty good example of that there is Nika down to half HP early on here in this lane. The tier continuing to look good for Julio. And look, a tall task, right? We have sung the praises of Julio through the early parts of this season so far. Coming into the SPL, he's been able to stand tall against some of the best to do it. But even outside of these god picks, Aggro, I think Nika, if we shift the conversation away from just the rookie solo laners to just solo laners in general, this may be Julio's toughest task yet.
Yeah, Julio definitely is going through the ringer in the solo lane, but that's just how solo lane is, because it feels like this is one of the strongest roles we currently have in the SPL. Everyone ends up playing to a really high level. And Julio went up against the guy who I think is doing the best so far, but Nika's going to prove that maybe he should be in that conversation. First blood for the Oni Warriors and a solo kill for Nika on that King Arthur.
Yeah, it's on me. He played fine okay yesterday, Julio did. So 2 back-to-back tough matchups, but there's Engage over here in the duo lane. Neoma pulled right back in. The Riptide out to safety, but a blink from Panatom closes the gap, and the Leviathans swiftly answer back with a kill of their own here in the duo lane.
And right on time, because look at Neil's beads. They're up now. They were just barely down whenever that engagement started. Really good attention to detail by the Leviathans, understanding that they had that timer down to the second pretty much, and knowing that they can get that kill onto Neil pretty much for free once Panatom gets up and over that wall.
Almost felt like a matter of time, didn't it, with Rongyu and Yarkor playing as aggressively as they had. So Neoma, silver lining is you got the beats now in your back pocket, but look at this. Look what's happening still in the solo lane. Julio has to ult out to get beneath his tier 1 tower. Nika has reached the point in the game where he's feeling comfortable enough taking these trades up against Julio. Got the tank boots online, plenty of conversation around that item, but still strong, still worth picking up on this pick, and Julio just cannot play in this lane right now, Aggro. I don't think he can step up to farm. One flurry of abilities here from Nika could be another kill.
He's going to get a big heal off right here, but Nika knows that that's exactly what Julio's going for and isn't going to let him get it for free. It's also that Panatom doesn't have his ultimate quite yet, so he knows that he's pretty safe. Fred shadowing this lane. Love the aggressiveness here from Nika. This is a guy that he's pretty familiar with, coming from EU. Julio, been around that scene for a long time. I know that Nika has a high opinion of Julio, but it's not going to stop him from giving him the work here whenever they go up against one another. Look at the net worth difference between the two, about 600 gold, and it's only growing if Nika keeps denying that many minions to Julio's tower.
It just seems so smart there from the Oni Warriors. When Nika's pushed that far forward, you have to imagine Panatom on the next blue buff is going to be looking to get some pressure out with the King Arthur. Maybe a bit overextended in that lane, so the Oni Warriors send Cuvo and Neil to the right side of the map. Leviathans continuing to search for pressure here on the left. A red buff up and respawning here soon. A bit telegraphed, not necessarily a bad thing, just means that the Oni Warriors know that the Leviathans are here and they're attempting to steal this buff away. Shinto sending through the damage, red buff dropped down, red buff picked up. Successful on the buff invade there for the Leviathans.
And Vote trades ultimates with Yarkor. I suppose I should say that the other way around. It was Vote with the initiation, but Vote now steps too far forward and doesn't end up dying, but does lose his purification beads. Nice little quick turnaround at the end to make sure that Moonlit charge didn't knock him out.
That's right, so Vote now able to stay alive. You're safe on this Jingwei, but you gotta play extra safe when there's a Wheelix on the other side. 6.5 minutes into this game, this tier 1 tower on the right-hand side of the map, very, very close to going down. In aggro, if it does go down, and it seems like it's just a matter of time unless Panatom can get something done over here, the Wheelix moving to the right side of the jungle, but Nika, I think, smartly kind of playing things safe. That just opens up this King Arthur for so much more. I mean, could see some early rotations here from Nika.
Very easily could. He's going to probably wait until he gets his Stone of Gaia. I imagine that's the direction he's going to go with so many knockups on the other side, and it's already a core item for Arthur, just giving him a little bit of extra sustain that he's been lacking ever since the removal of Glad Shield, its old passive. Surprised to see, I think Nika as well, the surprised at how little damage Fred did. Not really on Fred, of course, but expected that blue buff to be secured. Feels pretty bad, I think, to actually lose that one. Not only do you give Julio and Panatom some golden experience that they probably shouldn't have gotten, but Tier can be a little bit mana hungry over here. Losing that blue buff does feel pretty bad for him, and if Nika wanted to keep the pressure up long term, Julio not having access to that blue buff would have made that job a lot easier.
Julio went Warrior tab by some more damage, but a little less tanky, maybe one of the reasons. This lane's starting to shift the way it is. Panatom over in duo yet again. This time, Vote will use the airstrike. Out and away goes the Jingwei once more. Julio will knock Nika back beneath the tower, and Nika now on a bit of a turnaround has to use the beads, but look at this, Rongyu searching for a re-invade on the red buff, and instead it's just going to be some plug damage from Shinto out of the mid. The Tiamat getting a little time to scale up here. And the Oni Warriors not really feeling comfortable anywhere here on the left-hand side, it almost feels like, as Cubo Fred will get knocked up, pulled back in, beads used by that Osiris, and one more leap away for the Oni Warriors.
This is good for the for the Leviathans rather. They're getting a lot of relics down on cooldown and a lot of defensive options away from the Oni Warriors. That's beads on Cubo Fred and on Nika, so Panatom, once that gravity surge is up, has a couple options to go to. Even though Votes is coming up, he doesn't have his ultimate for a while, which means Yarkor, with his ultimate, can likely be aggressive in that left-hand side.
Well, wrong, you first use of the dropship there. Look at this. Vote stunned against the wall. It's a solo kill. Yarkor. This has been a guy who's happy to take these 1v1s against almost anyone. I'll hold my thought on that, as there's now a re-engage over here in solo lane as Nika gets ulted on as well. Half HP on the King Arthur, and Nika will survive for the time being, but Yarkor, the 1v1 machine, wins another against one of the SPL's best.
And he gets the beat at the exact same time, so now Panatom has even more options to go for with that gravity surge when it comes up. This is the early game pressure the Leviathans needed to put on with this draft, and they've understood what their job is, they've understood what they've drafted, and they're coming in ready to go in that regard. And that's the type of maturation I was looking for from these players coming into this season. They had their set of strategies, a little bit more team fight oriented, going to late game. Their objective play was very good last year, but everyone thought of them as a little bit more one-dimensional. With this sort of play style, again, it's working together as a unit, but it's earlier. They're drafting for early game. They're not just forcing early game, and then being able to play around it. When you draft these early game compositions, it's not like if you get to 28 minutes, you instantly lose the game. It just gets a little bit harder.
Right.
When you have a strength at that point in the game, not that they're unbeatable come late game by any stretch, but they have experience in that regard, then it removes some of the weakness of these styles of composition. So if the Leviathans can continue on this trend of playing a little bit more early pressure and executing on those draft picks, it's going to bode well for this team.
Look at this, Oni Warriors feeling comfortable enough to pull the Pyro. The Leviathans have sent a few members on over to the left side, so at what cost do the Oni Warriors get this Pyromancer? Vote airstrikes out, Desert Fury ticks for a couple bits of damage there. Vote trying to sidestep the CC, but there's just way too much, and Wrong You snags the kill. Vote has not been allowed to play this game. It was a 1v1 with Yarkor a minute ago, and now it's a 3v1. No chance Vote wins that. The bead's still down. Airstrike gets used. And the cards being stacked here against the Oni Warriors, especially the further behind Vote falls, now 2 levels behind Yarkor on the Honor.
Blink in from Panatom onto Cubo Fred, but not enough damage to take him down quite yet. Good job by Nika keeping Julio in combat as well, making sure that Blink wasn't available to him. The one thing that I will say that for the Leviathans is, this is what I was going to ask for, is they've got to get this Gorp down on the left-hand side. They put so much emphasis and so much pressure onto this dual lane side. If you're going to do that, I think it's important to take away that Greater Scorpion, because let's look at the last dive they just did on Vote, where 4 members of Oni Warriors go do Pyromancer instead. They're able to do that because they know there's no threat of the Leviathans getting Gold Fury on the back end and really extending that lead. That kill on the Vote, it's good. It sets them further behind. It gives them golden experience. All those things are true, but we say it all the time that kills aren't enough. It's got to be about objectives. And without that Gold Fury as an available objective, the Leviathans get less than they could have in that moment. They don't get his tier 1 tower either. And now Vote, while behind, isn't useless in these fights still. He's still a player at least.
Right, only 1 tier of what looks like an Executioner behind Yarkor on the other side. 1 level behind as well as the fight breaks out. Cubo Fred, first action we've seen from the Osiris so far this game. Just shy on the slow on the Panatom, and Neoma won't connect with the stun either. Now Yarkor rotates over from the duo lane, lets the Desert Fury fly, but the Desert Fury doesn't get anything. Neil has to use the beads, and Julio in 1 swift strike takes down Neoma alongside the rest of the Leviathans, and that's maybe all the blue side's looking for.
Away goes Vote with that airstrike. I mean, it was such a great idea. The wall was so perfect from Neoma to prevent Panatom from going back into Wronghue's ultimate. Loved that idea. Fred had the right idea. Panatom, no jump, no beads, but he's a little bit off the mark on that Lord of the Afterlife. They really needed that CC and damage to land. And Dardes, really the only one still with the ultimate on his side of the map, just was not able to find an angle in. I would have liked to see Dardes loop back around Gold Fury side. You have to play this Morgan like an assassin at this point in the game. And Dardes is so good at that, just for some reason decided that that wasn't the right opportunity for him to do so. I think he might have been able to catch Yarkor on the rotation and set up a pretty decent fight for the squad, but the way the team fight broke down and his pathing ended up making it very hard for him to be effective in the fight.
Oh, look, tough sledding aggro early on in this game for the duo lane of the Oni Warriors. 0-2 for Neoma, 0-2 for Vote. Only Nika has found that early solo kill over Julio, but Julio now able to rotate into that previous fight, feel confident on that tier. Finally, kind of a free purple buff over there for Vote to keep this Jingwei in a position of contest. Shinto opting for an item aggro that we've started to see on the rise just a little bit more here. The Charon's coin has one stack in its back pocket now, and look, if the Leviathans are going to be fighting as much as they are, you'll get plenty of stacks early on in this game.
And Shinto's so far ahead, the less damage on it doesn't feel too bad for him. He's got plenty of damage caked in at level 15, really being able to farm selfishly, again, by design here by the Leviathans. Just want to see what type of damage he's going to do now that he has that Divine Ruin. I imagine it's going to be hefty.
Rongyu alone with all of the Oni Warriors here. Nika has rotated over from solo. Julio pushing the wave in the mid lane, so both solo laners will be here. Gold Fury fight brewing over the horizon. The Leviathans feel like they've got a lead on the left side of the map, because they do. 2 levels over Vote, 1 kill and 3 assists as well. Yarkor has that Vote doesn't have, but in this fight as we stand, the levels are the biggest difference maker. Only the 1 tier in the Wind Demon separates them in the items department. Julio and Dardes alone in the back line. Panatom is down just a bit of HP here. And the Leviathan's playing this one slow, looking for an engage. Is it on Nika? For the time being it is. Gravity Surge pulls the King Arthur back in, and the King Arthur cannot play. Now Cubo Fred, with Lord of the Afterlife, jumps into the Leviathan snake pit, but Vote able to turn around a kill here. Shinto decimates down Cubo Fred with a bit of damage, and the chase continues for the Leviathans.
Ooh, an up-down coming from Dardes, really getting into that solo lane mentality, but
wow.
Too little, too late from him. It's a double kill from Shinto. And the Leviathans just understand the pacing of their team fights really well with this style of composition. They do exactly to Nika what they did to Neil on the left-hand side for their first kill of the game. Nika's beads were down for 5 seconds whenever he got pulled. He had 5 seconds left on the cooldown of his beads. But the Leviathans were so precise with their timer that they knew that they could afford to all in. Because if they try and all in on Nika and then he beads and just starts dumping damage and dodging damage, the Leviathans lose that fight. That's a fairly high-risk pull-in, but you know you have to get him 100-0 before he can act, and the Leviathans did exactly that. Before the fight started, Julio was able to go in and get Dardes' beads with his blink. That made Dardes a lot more scared to go in. It's a very difficult transformation. We saw it get interrupted in the middle of the engagement. Really, really great team fighting so far from the Leviathans. I've really appreciated how much they understand what their composition wants to do and then are executing on it. You think it's a given, but even at this level, sometimes it isn't.
No, and I think now a good time to reiterate a point you made earlier. I think gone are the days where we can only refer. Oh, we'll return back to that as Yarkor takes a 2v1 here, nearly gets it. The up-down counters out. Cubo Fred, is he going to do it? No! Vote gets the last bit of damage, but Yarkor nearly gets a kill in that 2v1. Leviathans are going to take the chance to go over towards that Pyromancer, extend this gold lead to just shy of 5,000. It's a stun onto Rongyu. Maybe slows down any further aggression, and it will for the time being.
A bit ambitious.
To reiterate your earlier point, I think it's time to stop only referring to this Leviathans team as this late-game powerhouse. They know how to play this early and mid-game.
They've done so very well, at least in the last 2 games we've seen from them, but we'll see if it can continue as a change for Dardes into that on her. That Changeling ultimate gets used, and it does force the blink from Panatom at the very least, but not a whole lot else.
Nika blinks through, finds the stun onto Panatom, but it's an immediate knockup. And Nika slashes Panatom down for a quick return kill now for the Oni Warriors. Neoma, with just a bit of insurance, will throw up the River's Rebuke. And the Oni Warriors able to get one back onto Panatom. So the Awilix off to a roaring start here in this game. A good target for the Warriors to slow down.
Gets his ultimate as well, but at least Panatom holds on to the beads for the time being. With that rotation from Nika, he actually goes back to the right-hand side. I thought he might stick around knowing if they were going to try and play aggressive, but they're looking for Yarkor again.
Yarkor getting dove now, and now it's the Onher who doesn't get much of a chance to play. We've seen this against Vote through a large part of this game, but now it's happening to the Leviathans. Dardes being identified now by Shinto. There's some up-down for you, and now Shinto on a killing spree. You thought this King Arthur was off to a great player damage lead after what Nika did over there in the solo lane. Now we're 18.5 minutes in, and Shinto is caught up, getting some great damage out, Soul Gem for a little extra burst, and this Tiamat has already proven, not only in this game but in others, that late game damage is very difficult to deal with.
Just a mistake from Dardes for sure. Cannot be trying to take that fight when you're that far down. Now he loses his relics, and he's still even further down. He's 4 levels down to Shinto at this point, and Tiamat is just not one of those gods that you can fight once she gets ahead. Once she's at that point, you just have to accept the L.
Yeah, Shinto and Tiamat both there. Nika uses his beads in a bit of a 2v1 here. No assistance from either team, though Shinto slowly rotating in over from the mid lane. So one way or another, Nika goes down here. And it looks like might be Shinto on the rotation. That's maybe worst case scenario now for the Oni Warriors, because with that kill, Shinto ticks over to level 20, full 5 levels ahead of Dardes. We're 19.5 minutes into the game, but Kibo Fred under a little bit of pressure now from Rongyu. Yarkor, of course he's going to go for the up-down. The Desert Fury doesn't connect for all of the damage, but Kibo Fred out of the fight. Julio wants more, and force the blink from the Osiris.
Fred has just been ineffective so far in this game.
Right?
I feel like he's been using that Lord of the Afterlife more to run away than to go in. This Osiris jungle pick has not looked great yet, but this is where the Oni Warriors have to respond. The Leviathan's feeling good enough to pull fire.
Oh man, Vote just left alone here. Had to use the beads after an impale from Yarkor. Caught him against the wall, and then the airstrike defensively. Just seeming a bit caught out, a bit out of sorts here are the Warriors. Neil now left alone over in solo. The River's Rebuke buys just a bit of time, but Yarkor gets that one. Now we extend to a 5-kill lead. Dardes has been lurking in behind. Still a 4-level deficit on your Morrigan, so either farm up, find a flank, but Dardes can't join the party just yet.
He's still only level 16 when he does. I wonder who his transformation target's going to be. Maybe even transforming into Shinto and just using the stats that he's accumulated so far.
Whoa, wrong you. Maybe pulling Yarkor back into the fight here. Cubo Fred deleted. I didn't see what happened there because it all happened so fast. Now Vote is going to get stunned down. It's this like pump fake of a play style the Leviathans are going for. Yeah, we're going to pull the fire, I promise. And then somebody from the Warrior steps up, and then Rongyu re-engages, and then they go back. I swear we're going to do it this time. And then they step back forward and get a pick on the Oni Warriors. It's the individual baits that keep happening, and the Leviathans happy to take advantage.
It's that objective play that the Leviathans are typically very good at. Now, they struggled at it yesterday in Game 2 up against the Dragons, but the reason that was so surprising is because that did feel like a bit of an anomaly. It typically has been a very good strength for this Leviathan squad. It's Dardes about to get pinched, running towards Julio, and Julio doing a good job playing free safety, but might have just let Dardes get through. No, a blink in from Rongyu. Good choice in order to just change into the Horus and get as far away as humanly possible.
Because that's a real long rotation Dardes takes there. He's kind of hovering behind the Leviathans there on the left side, or the right side, excuse me, of the map, around that FG. Ends up rotating through, trying to steal away some of that jungle farm, but then has to use his transformation to get out. Leviathans will take down the Oni Fury pretty quietly here. I guess in that moment, aggro, and I won't get a chance to talk about it, as Neilma is going to get engaged on here, and a Riptide will keep him safe. In that moment, maybe that's the best Dardes can do. If your team is just going to be losing these individual picks, let's just try to steal and farm up as much as we can.
That it's certainly not fighting the Leviathans at this point. I can tell you that much. There is no world where fighting the Leviathans is the right call right now for the Oni Warriors. You're basically set up to choose where you make your last stand, pick your own Alamo sort of adventure book is the call here for the Warriors. And I like this instead. Don't sit underneath a tower, just try and bait them into an uneven fight. But problem for the Warriors is that the fight isn't exactly uneven. The Leviathans are here in force.
Oni minions and Tiamat minions make their way down the mid lane. Oni minions on the left side of the map as well. So now the Oni Warriors are going to have to choose. Do we deal with wave pressure? Do we deal with an imminent Pyro or Fire Giant call? Well, Neil is the initial answer. He'll go back towards mid, deal with a few of those minions. But we've seen this story before. The Oni Warriors get baited in here, and then it's a sudden swift engage from the Leviathans to take that chance away. This time the Warriors keep themselves back far enough. It seems like all the Warriors can hope is that they sniff out that the Leviathans are definitely doing the FG, and they move in, maybe attempt to steal. I agree with you here. It's very difficult to imagine a world where this fight feels any sort of comfortable. Cubo Fred gets engaged on as the Fire Giant is half HP here, so the Oni Warriors work their way forward, sensing that the Leviathans are indeed on the objective, but it gets reset as a fight brews.
Tiamat uses that storm, but not a whole lot of effective damage. I mean, the best that you're getting from that is that Cubo Fred lost his beads, but it did cost Panatom the ultimate, so Leviathan seemed willing to play it slow around that ultimate cooldown potentially coming back, but not a lot of CDR there for Panatom, only that Erendite providing it. So 10% means it takes a little bit for that Gravity Surge to come back online, and this pace being very slow now all of a sudden, not very slow, but certainly slower, is all because of these starter item upgrades that we just saw the Leviathans buy. I mean, they could force a fight right now, but what if I'm just 12% stronger in the jungle as Panatom? Or what if everyone's just way tankier now that Rongyu has that Sentinels boon? I understand the desire to want to upgrade those right away, but now I think they have to put the pedal to the metal. You can't let the Oni Warriors get free farm for much longer. There's no point. I think the Leviathans are so much stronger that there's no reason to be hesitant here.
Remember, it was a 5-level difference for Dardes, now level 19 on the Morgan. The item difference is mainly the big one there in the mid lane. Vote's going to have to be big here for the Oni Warriors. Julio running away from the rest of this fight and leaps away. Neoma sends up the River's Rebuke as well as the Leviathans. A bit of a disengage. Cubo Fred on the opposite side was targeted there. And aggro, one more wash here. Julio uses his ult. Cubo Fred, Neoma do the same. Beads down on Dardes out of the mid lane. That's important to look at. But blink from Panatom as well. Maybe the Warriors feeling okay getting a couple of those actives in an ult.
Every single time that it's a clash and nothing really happens on either end, it's a win for the Oni Warriors.
Yep. Let's see if nothing happens here, as Nika will dash away, bait in, bait out. The Leviathans continue with this game plan here, slow on the FG pull. They had it to half HP, might have been able to complete it a minute ago, but for reasons we've covered and more, the Leviathans slow now on the objective. Level 19 for 3 members of the Oni Warriors. Look at this. Rongyu now looking for the engage. Onto the Fire Giant because the rest of the Leviathans hoping, praying for a big team fight, but instead it's just the FG call now for the Leviathans. Half HP on the target. Cubo Fred close by. Neoma closes that gap down as well, and Julio down to half. Dardes transforms into the tier and into the pit. He goes, but Dardes melting away as Shinto leaps in, as you expect the Tiamat to do, and a little bit of damage cleaves on through, but the Leviathans aggro looking lower.
Dardes low, Vote low, but as you said, it's the Leviathans who come out a little bit weaker because of the sustain from the Emoja. And look, the Leviathans, every time that these clashes happen and no kills occur, it doesn't mean that they've lost it or anything like that,
no.
that they have no shot. It just gives them another opportunity to make a mistake. Because the team that's in the lead oftentimes is the one that has to make the mistake in order to give up that lead. And what makes Fire Giant dances so hard is that it's very easy to make mistakes around that objective because the stakes are high, it deals a lot of damage, the corridors are narrow. A lot of times it's very easy to just get caught up in what's happening and let the Fire Giant get stolen. Someone goes too far forward to zone, you get picked. You know, those sorts of things can happen very easily. You take too much damage and lose the team fight. All of those things happen very easily. So every single time it looks like it's about to go well, and then the Leviathans get a little gun shy, they pull their foot off the gas, then it's just another opportunity for a mistake to occur. And that's what makes these feel so scary in these moments in my mind, is that they've had a lot of these opportunities, but their unwillingness to push forward with them makes me a little bit nervous.
Now level 20 reached by a couple more members of the Oni Warriors. Big burst of damage finds Neoma, the Emoja, just a bit overextended, and the Leviathans make the Oni Warriors pay. Immediately over to the FG. The Leviathans may be feeling like this is the advantage they need to start up the big one.
So even though it's the Leviathans have a chance to make a mistake every single time, they're thinking it's the other way around. It's that the Oni Warriors have an opportunity to make a mistake every single time we pull and reset and pull and reset. And that time it's Neil with a mistake, just too far forward in the mid lane, had his beads, decided not to use them. The Leviathans they're done waiting. The problem is, look at where Yarkor is with the wave. He's far, and he's the primary damage on this Phoenix.
That's right, going to take just a minute for this on her to get back in. A moment ago, Hugo Fred pushed out the left side of the map. Panatom and Nika duel it out over here in the mid lane. Still waiting on the on her. So the Phoenix survives for the time being. Julio alone in the base. The Oni Warriors are still just a second until Neomar can rejoin the fight. So full stacked at 5v5 now. Down the right side go the Atlantis Leviathans. Waves and Tiamat minions are in, but so is Rongu. Finds a stun onto Kivo Fred. Julio up, down, but he's alone with the rest of the Oni Warriors as the solo laner made a mistake. For the time being, yes. But on the other end, Shinto is able to delete Dardes with a quick volley of damage out of this Tiamat. Into the backline, he goes as well. Kivo Fred's got a few chained up, but Yarkor with a massive impale back keeps the stun off of him, and the Leviathans lose one, but they get one in tow.
Man, it looked like it was going to be much worse for the Leviathans in that fight, but Shinto salvages it by one-tapping Dardes, who transformed into Julio and experienced exactly what Julio experienced, which is, man, I'm way less tanky than I thought I was. Those two both end up dying very, very quickly in that engagement. You look at Julio's build, it starts to make sense. It's a lot of hybrid items, it's a lot of movement speed, it's a little bit of health, but not a lot of protections in the build there for Julio. And both players who use it end up falling very quickly. This Tiamat for Shinto's a problem, man. It is. I don't know what else you need to see in order to be convinced to just take that away from him.
That's why there was such confusion early on about this Tiamat. Maybe the Tiamat starts to fall into like the Yamoja category, where there's some who can, there are some who can't. Shinto's one who can. Yeah. Got Yamoja her first win, and then the second win after that, and they're set versus the Kings. And it's been looking good for Shinto ever since. 10 affected kills, 7 of them full-on kills for the Tiamat here. Leviathan's taking a slightly easier route on base sieging here, realizing there's a tier 2 in left, tier 2 in mid. Both to be looked at as well, but that's got to be a slight confidence boost, doesn't it, for the Oni Warriors, that you didn't lose your Phoenix on the right-hand side. You've already been able to get a kill in return in what looked like maybe even a big sweeping team fight. You're maybe feeling better about your Phoenix defense.
You are, but now who's wave clearing these Tiamat minions and giant waves coming in? They actually do a pretty decent job of doing so. A little surprised almost at how well they wave cleared that, but I guess Arthur can help in that regard. Look at where Dardes is. He's so far back. His beads are down from what? What did he beads? Oh, it must have been a blink from
Kivo Fred! Kivo Fred gets pulled in to the front line here, and Shinto immediately dives into the back. Neil will send the frenzy on through the Oni Warriors here. Rongu looking for a re-engage, hovering around, but instead it's just buying space for this. The Oni Warriors back away from their Phoenix, and the Leviathans will take the bird and leave.
So that ultimate from Rongu looks like it does nothing, right? He moves about 6 inches. He takes an Uber to go to the corner store, basically, is what it seems like. But what it does is it puts a lot of threat on the Oni Warriors. They can't tell exactly where Rongu's going to go. What if he puts everyone behind us? Or what if he switches everybody to the right side Phoenix? You know, where is he going with that? And that creates some questions, that creates some hesitation, and it buys a lot of space for the Leviathans to actually deal the DPS. And then Rongu can just use it to go nowhere and provide a shield. No harm, no foul for him.
Leviathans walk into the tier 2, no defense really from the Oni Warriors here. Just about 15 seconds or so on the Fire Giant buff, so you imagine that this Fire Giant power play is all but over for the Atlantis Leviathans now. They'll be able to go back, spend up some money. Yarkor, 3,500 gold. That's one beefy power pot that the Onher is going to be able to purchase here moving forward. Then you have to look at these late game Hunter builds. It's been largely the same. Spectral Armor then comes at a premium here. Nika's got one on his side. Julio does as well. Rongu also has picked up a Spectral Armor, so vote, I don't know, in a 2v1 Spectral Armor on one side versus the other, you're going to have to pick those targets properly.
Looks like Nika has his, and Cuvo Fred, I imagine, is building towards one as well. He is. So now the dive becomes a little bit easier onto Yarkor with this many Spectrals on your side, and Dardes is likely going to be transforming into somebody with a Spectral whenever he uses that Changeling ultimate. That's the thing about this Morgan pick. We haven't seen it be particularly effective quite yet. I just don't know who Dardes is supposed to turn into in these fights, because I don't think he has a great transformation. Arthur isn't good because you transform with 0 energy, and so you basically never get a chance to use the big ultimate. Osiris late game isn't really scaring anybody too much. Maybe it is one of the hunters you want to turn into, but I imagine at this point it's almost definitely Tiamat in my mind.
Maybe Paul on Scylla at Worlds is a good transformation option on Morgan if Dardes if he's allowed to do that.
Is that available? Where's that in my little wheel? Huh? Where's that in my wheel? That's what I need.
You need a GM account. You got to type in some extra words in the command bar to get that option. Wrong you triggers the ultimate here. The Arcor and Panatom are inside of the circle. Will it start the engage? Yes, it will. In the back go the Leviathans, but a big pillar separates out this fight. Shinto has found Nika as well, sends the Minotaur running forward, and Panatom left alone jumps over the River's Review. Kuyo the same can be said for the tier. It's a stun down onto Shinto. The Oni Warriors now fully regrouped from their base, and the Leviathans just seeing if they can find a pick again.
Yeah, but they got a pretty big ultimate cooldown. River's Rebuke is one that can cause you a decent amount of trouble, so I'm sure they're happy that they got that. Plus, they've got fire minions on that Titan already.
Yep. That's what we've seen other teams do. Play with those fire minions. Fire Giant down beneath 20% HP. Huyo so low here. Vote and Dardes combined for a big burst of damage onto the Leviathan's frontliner. Instead, it's the Pyromancer now being looked at. The Oni Warrior suddenly feeling a little bit more confident, but Nika will eat half of his HP and damage as well. It's a pull back in. It's Dardes who gets pulled back towards Panatom, and look at the up-down from Julio here, cleaving damage on through, but the tier has to leave. Nika will not find the kill. Instead, Yarkor does on the backline. Cubo Fred goes down.
And Nika might be left to the wolves. Blink back from Julio. No fear from that man at all. Dardes lurking in the back line, gets Panatom, but Julio's still alive, and the Oni Warriors Titan is in trouble.
And it looks like the Leviathans, with one more kill, and they might not need any more, could walk down the mid lane here. A fire wave just caught up on the left side minions. Neomod doing his best to buy some time, but the Riptide sends him face planting into the pillar. It's a deicide 35 minutes in, and that'll be game 1 to the Atlantis Leviathans.
The Warriors did an honorable job of hanging on. They made that game difficult for the Leviathans when it looked for a while like it wouldn't be at all, but ultimately just too little too late. I think that Dardes did his most work by far in that fight by transforming into the Tiamat that has been just demolishing them throughout the course of that game. Fred really felt unimpactful on that Osiris jungle in this game. We did not get a chance to call his name really at all in this one. I think Fred has really struggled. I mean, obviously one of the players playing over from Europe, certainly feel for him with the ping issues that he's had, but I think that that's one of the key ingredients that's missing right now for the Warriors, is that Cubo Fred that we saw for that PK roster last year isn't here in Season 8 quite yet.
Right, I mean, the first big splash that I think the Osiris had was kind of the 3-man dive onto Yarkor. Panatom was controlling this early game so heavily. It looks like it's going one way after Nika finds a solo kill there in the solo lane. But the Leviathans cool, calm, and collected, and that's, I think, the most important thing here, especially in that early game. The Leviathans drove that pace, and then were calculated in their efforts around that fire giant. The Leviathans looking good here in game 1, looking good in their Insight Apparel Company jerseys as well. Make sure to check out Insight Apparel Company. Actually, it's shop.smiteproleague.com, furnished by Insight Apparel Company. They got jerseys, hoodies, t-shirts, all that sort of fun stuff. Shop.smiteproleague.com. Make sure to check it out. Thanks once more to the Insight Apparel Company. That's only game number 1, though, in this best of 3 set. We'll take a quick break and then right back into game 2.
Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are going to take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're going to need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce that the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
That's a lot of cores.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
What's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the Smite Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible Smite experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
And you're telling me an alien wore this?
Welcome back to the SPL powered by Alienware, and a big congrats to the Leviathans on a dominant Game 1 victory. If you also would like to be dominant, then I bet a great way to start that process would be to grab some Alienware stuff of your own. We are obviously really thankful to them for partnering with us for Season 8, so we can bring this all to you. Make sure you follow them. It's at Alienware on Instagram and Twitter. So you can get involved with their whole community they've got going on and improve your own setup at home as well. If you want to use Smite code AW, you sure can. That'll make things a little bit easier. So it's Gore here with me as we're going to break down what just happened there in game number 1. And Gore, it was kind of all over the place at the beginning of the game. A ton of pressure for the Leviathans. Solo was a bit behind for them, but that changed relatively quickly. Your core seemed to have no trouble just kind of taking care of Vote every time that came up. Where, though, was kind of the big crux of this for you in terms of the Leviathans really getting so much control over how this game went?
Oh, man, there's so many places where things went well for them. I mean, you got a solo kill early on. This is pretty much what put Vote behind. I think from that point forward, Vote was behind. And I got to give credit to Yarkor, man. This guy's just brave. Like, he is playing... I think Mifflin had equated it, and I could see this too. Maybe I'll give him more credit if he starts diving Phoenixes for it, but like Season 2, like Season 1, Zapman, like no cares in the world, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
But I think the real damage that was done to the Warriors was Shinto. Like, I mean, almost no doubt in my mind. 10.5 KDA in just this game. This Tiamat was ridiculous to try and handle, and you know, we were worried about it, I want to say even coming into this week. Like, it had been doing all right last week, I think towards the tail end, but the question was whether or not it was going to be a mainstay. There have definitely been mid laners this week who have proven, yes, she deserves to be banned, and yes, she is going to be a lot to handle, and I think Shinto showcases that with perfect nature here. 8-0-5, even though you don't necessarily get like a clean amount of setup like Rong Yu, 2-0-12, a lot of assists, you know, effective in 14 kills, but maybe not the best early game pressure, not a lot of damage that comes out of it. Same thing Panatom, maybe not the best like early game pressure we saw from that. you get 34,000 damage out of Shinto, plus all of those kills, plus all of the setup he was having for the team. Add that in with what Yarkor did, and it didn't matter that Julio fell behind. Everybody in the late game, because of that, was able to look phenomenal.
Yeah, and there's a particular moment, if we want to talk a little bit about what we think maybe the Warriors could have done differently in this one, where there's this prolonged fight over near Fire Giant, and Dardes kind of spends the entire fight posted up way in the back of the jungle. I think it was pretty clear what the idea was. He was in position for an eventual Fire Giant steal. It just never really came to fruition for him.
You know the cat meme where he's got his hands on his hips and he's just, what am I doing over there? That was what Dardes was doing. He spent like 2 minutes just standing in the jungle. And like, it's one of those plays that there is an alternate reality that branched right there that Dardes, like the Fire Giant gets started up and he gets to go in and steals it. And it's the craziest thing we get to see. And the Warriors have won because of that play. But that didn't happen. I mean, he was level 16 versus what was a level 20 on the other side, and he was just kind of chilling there. Got a couple of experience games, but nothing like big enough to really warrant how much time he spent in the jungle.
Yeah, hard to say. They were pretty behind at that point. If Dardes is there, does that really turn things around? But like, obviously the play went for it didn't pan out. So some things on the Warriors that could have been cleaned up. Not just Dardes, obviously. I think there were some areas across the map where they need some help, but that was just one that stuck out for us as we are in to the picks and bans now for game number 2. It is a little bit less all Guardian focus here from the Oni Warriors. They're banning Tiamat and Set alongside the Amir. So that means Sobek is still out there. We'll get an update in a moment on what else the Leviathans banned out there for you all, but it looks like, at least for the time being, that there might still be some top-tier Guardians on the board here, and it is indeed Sobek who gets locked in first overall for the Warriors. You're feeling pretty good already if you're putting that into the hands of Neo Ma and preventing what was that key combo for the Leviathans as well with that Sobek Awilish they really like to run, so I don't have any problems with this start here for the Warriors.
And I honestly don't disagree with what the Leviathans have replied with, right? Like, Sobek was one of the top bans last time. There was a very heavy focus on Rong Yu, and maybe that means this third pick for the Leviathans should be something more Rong Yu related. Last time they had Tiamat, and they grabbed the solo plus on her. This time around, I don't think Shinto, because Tiamat's been banned, necessarily is stressed about what he's going to get. Instead, you take away one of the biggest strengths that they had, specifically what Nika was able to run around with. This King Arthur, he has been the right next to on her in terms of pick priority for the entire league. He's tied with Sun Wukong, so it makes sense to see them both come through this, but I think King Arthur, especially after this week, is starting to pull a little further ahead in terms of the priority, and it's making things a little more worrisome for the Warriors.
Wow, Yamoja wasn't banned either, so now it gets coming through for Rung late in the draft. Listen, I think that you're 100% right. The Warriors have a nice top 3 here. There's no world you're complaining about Sobek, Wukong, Heimdall with how strong all 3 of those picks are right now, but somehow, just because of the pilots behind him, Arthur on here, Yamoja seems a little more scary to me. It's crazy, because I think the Warriors have a pretty solid top draft too. But at this point, hard to say who will be able to overcome who. Just nice that now Julio will have the King Arthur on his side and maybe won't get bullied over there in Soul Lane at the start of that game this time around. And vote on a more aggressive pick as well. Remember, he was on the Jing Wei in Game 1 and still was getting really bullied by that on her in the hands of Yarkor. Maybe this will give him a better chance to fight back on the Heimdall.
And I'm really, again, excited to see what this is going to be able to do. Safer, but I think more potent at fighting, which is incredibly important for them. And that's the thing I think that is kind of missing last time around. The comeback potential of a Jing Wei doesn't really stand out to me the same way. Like, Heimdall is still going to hit like a truck later on in the game, even if he starts to fall behind a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic for vote works, because I will admit that needs to be lifted up almost immediately. You had mentioned it, like we highlighted Dardes, and it's easy to kind of poke at it and be like, man, what are you doing? You're just kind of hanging out in the jungle. But as you had mentioned, everybody was behind. Like, there wasn't anything Vote could do in terms of damage, and so I think if you are at least as Heimdall, I assume, a little safer than going to be able to get away from letting Yarkor run away with a 2-3 level lead early on. That'll help alleviate that stress in the late game. And
just for the record, there was pressure there from Panatom in that lane too. Not like Orcor completely just bodied Vote over there. There were some ganks that helped set up for him too, but hopefully this Heimdall can withstand that a little bit easier and even look to get aggressive on his own feet, as it's Discordia into Finra for the Oni Warriors. So Finra jungle with this Discordia apple to potentially even give out that early passive, maybe onto the Finra, maybe onto the Wukong. That should provide a good amount of additional damage there for them over in wherever he ends up on the map, but likely we'd think in solo.
And I've been keeping track of it. Look, every time a new god gets locked in, every day that we move forward with it, there's only 42 left now. Discordia's locked in. The first game, like, she was a big deal last year, and, you know, she got to come through. Like, it's one of those conversations when you look at her, I think she falls into a similar category, at least in my mind, as where someone like Raijin is going to stand, where they don't necessarily have an ult that is, like, the objective secure. They don't necessarily, like, they're safe, they've got good damage, and they're good in team fights. Like, that's what you need out of it. That's what she's going to be able to provide. I'm really excited to see what this Strife can do. I think in combination with some of the other CC they have, like the Leviathans, are going to get locked down one way or another this game. It's just who is going to be able to do it. And again, with Heimdall Discordia damage, I think that later on, as long as they can stay even this time around, it's going to be a pretty hard-hitting draft.
And it's in the hands of Dardes too. Hard not to like that pick when we know what he can do, even if we haven't quite seen it from him just yet here in this season. I think this might be an opportunity for him to turn it around. The Discordia certainly can have some pressure in lane, can provide that to other lanes as well, but it's Susano for Panatom. This pick gonna make it really hard for Discordia to hide even inside that erratic behavior, right? Typhoon doesn't care. All of his big wide abilities do not care about your maneuverability. That gives him the option to really lock him down, but maybe a little bit still worried about this Fenrir with the Susano. He could certainly get grabbed up by that Ragnarok and just led right into an apple and suddenly blown up real quick. So Panatom got to make sure he's careful in this matchup too.
There's a lot of just shaky nature when it comes down to this. Now, I'm going deep, Finch. I'm bringing back my Season 7 stat sheet to try and get a little more numbers on specifically Panatom's Susano last year, because that was something that was like we saw it picked up a ton. We saw it banned a ton. Like, it became a big deal. And so once those finish loading up for me, I'll be able to be more insightful on that. But just going into how it plays for this game, I mean, in terms of keeping track of Discordia, it's going to give him some AoE abilities, helping hit her when she's invisible, things like that. A lot of those fun controls, I think that's going to be able to come through, at least in the mid, let's say 2-on-2 before the supports get over there. But then you start mentioning it, like you said, the Fenrir and what he's going to be bringing to the table. The Strife is added onto the table. The Pluck is added onto the table. Like, I feel like Susano, at least in some of these instances, is going to be spending a lot of time running away with that. Now, it was picked 20 times for them last year. So, I mean, this is a very prominent pick. I think, now I'm looking at it and seeing what they picked up. It is the most picked jungle that they had throughout all of that. And he won 13 of those 20 games. Like, it was not a failing win rate there for Panatom on this. So definitely something to be worried about. But is it going to be enough? I don't know. Like, the CC on the Warriors, man, it just seems so heavy-handed.
It does. Leviathans have great team fight presence, but you wonder if that's going to be enough to overcome the pick potential that exists here for the Oni Warriors on the back of Fenrir, on the back of something like Pluck, like Charge Prey on this Sobek. I think you've got a point there, Gore, when you talk about that CC potential. Does it matter how good the Leviathans team fight is if someone's always going to be kind of plucked out of that combo and they never really get to line up all the pieces? That's going to be the Leviathans' focus, I'm thinking. And it's what they're best at, is withstanding that early pressure, getting to the point where they can work as 5, and then overwhelming you.
I mean, this is a team. Look, we've seen beads on pretty much everybody at this point. Solo laners picking it up. Your support's picking it up. I won't be surprised if there's a majority of the Leviathans that scoop that one together, especially with the mobility they have. And early on, alleviating that pressure might just be enough to really give them that lead. There's also a lot of windows, though, like a lot of avenues. Sobek, oh, hey, he plucks, you use your beads. All of a sudden, Fenrir ganks over there, and you're definitely going to be feeling the brunt of the damage.
Well, let's get it down to Dolson and Aggro for game number 2.
Early game is going to be hyper important for the Oni Warriors. You imagine here this game, Dolson, Aggro, Doug bringing you game number 2 of the Oni Warriors versus the Leviathans. And early game for Cubo Fred, Aggro, maybe more important. And the Oni Warriors are going to give him a pick that's able to facilitate that in the Fenrir.
Much better early fight for the Oni Warriors here with their composition. I think that they've got the tools to really be the lane bullies that the Leviathans were in game 1, but we got to see that willingness to be those aggressive players early on. This team hasn't been really strong in that area quite yet. I think that the Oni Warriors, I mean, a lot of question marks about this team right now because they have so much talent on this roster. They've got the talent to be a top 2 team, no doubt about it, but they just haven't seemed to mesh their play styles very well quite yet.
What's the mindset here from Neilma? Look, starter item for Rongyu, tier 1 boots. Neil forgoes the starter item, tier 2 boots on his side. Maybe that's a sign that he wants to go back and get aggressive early on into this game. Dardes, low, hits level 2 later on than Shinto, but an interesting start for Neil.
This is fairly common, but now he's in trouble because he didn't hit level 2. He's supposed to without going Benevolence early because you give up that XP, that missed Impale bails Neil out on that dive in, but it doesn't help out Vote, who is still also level 1. Don't know what the Oni Warriors did wrong here in this duo lane. Believe they're supposed to be level 2 by now. Must have missed too many creeps. Yeah, they were 1 creep off hitting level 2, and this puts Neil in a stronger position to be at boots 2. He has more power than Rongyu. He's got more mobility than either other character in the duo lane. And you finish your boots and then you buy the Benevolence a little bit after that, because otherwise he would have been level 2 significantly after Vote would have been on this Heimdall.
Right, ideally you're hitting that level 2 mark early, get the pluck online, then a full volley maybe grabs you a kill, but Julio under pressure again. Remember, Nika got that solo kill in game number 1. That was a King Arthur versus a tier, but for Nika and Julio respectively. This time Nika on the Sun Wukong, and I think enough has been said about the synergy that pick holds with the Bluestone, the ability to lane bully so strong. Vote feeling a little pressure here. Yarkor aggressive, stun down on the backside will connect onto Vote. Early beads, but Neil in on the pluck, and then immediate beads from Wrong. You had to get that right in the moment, or else the Emoja is headed right into tower range there. And somehow everyone survives here in duo.
Neil continues to chase, but he's not going to get a whole lot of help from Vote, who is still quite weak and doesn't have beads. That's this start that teams have been doing with the Noble Benevolent start supports reset after like 3 waves in order to go and get their boots. Thankfully, someone finally does it. Just run past the wave and don't let them step up. I think too many teams have just cleared the waves and allowed the solo hunter to get a wave of XP all by themselves. Vote appropriately punished for this start that a lot of supports are going for. But Neil, because he has backed and gotten those boots, he's really tanky right now and has a lot of mobility, so he's able to do exactly this. No other boot option lets you be this aggressive this early on.
Yeah, Neil feeling comfortable with the boot purchase here, as Vote was able to go back, grab the purple buff. So it's beads down on Vote, beads down on Rongyu as well, as Blink used by Neil there, nearly getting the pluck in on over. Been quiet from the jungler so far, but both junglers hitting that level 5 mark right now. So it's time to spot out some engages. This is the point in the game where you need this Fenrir to start to get a little more active, but maybe it's Panatom who finds the opening gank here. It's level 5 for the Susano. Vote is pulled back in.
Too early.
But then uses, Panatom, it's a beautiful play. He follows Vote through the crystal, and down goes the Heimdall. Unreal from the Leviathans jungler.
Just too early from Vote. He's got to know that jet stream is on him and that he's tagged if he goes through that Bifrost. He has to basically stand his ground as long as he can, let Neil peel for him, because by teleporting, Neil becomes worthless in that fight. And instead, Vote signed himself up for a 1v1 he can't possibly win. Not been Vote's best set in the laning phase so far. I think that this Heimdall pick, normally so safe. Same thing for the Jingwei, but the Leviathans have not been deterred by the god selections or the player playing them. They've been happy enough to come on over and try and force him to make some mistakes. And right there, he makes one for Panatom to get first blood.
Well, luckily, 10 seconds away from the beads being back up now for Vote. Gormizer with some good stats there from Season 7. I think he said Panatom picked this god 20 times over the course of the year. 13 out of those 20 games were wins, so Panatom has definitely proven his record on this pick. Now Cubo, Fred, and Nika getting aggressive over by the blue buff, but Panatom again lands the teleport onto Cubo Fred, who will escape here, but Nika's still getting aggressive onto Julio. Could be a kill in the backline. Shinto rotates from mid, and picks up one. But now it's Dardes trying to sidestep the damage. No chance here unless Neilma has saved the day, and he hasn't. And Rongyu will add another. It's a 2v1 trade. Leviathans ahead.
Rongyu is so sick at this god, dude. He is
isn't he?
so good at Yamoja. How many different portals? I mean, when Panatom got First Blood, he puts a Riptide right on top of him so that Neil can't pluck him back and force his beads. Right there, Fred jumps away and right into the waiting arms of a Riptide portal that bumps him back and secures the kill for Shinto. This Leviathans team, this is when they look really strong. That, you know, the criticism has been, oh, they're too predictable. But they're really good on those picks, so it works out for them the vast majority of the time. This is what we're talking about, where, yeah, it's no secret that Rongyu's going to play Yamoja. It's no secret that Shinto likes to go to something like the Raijin, and that Yakora is going to run back the exact same pick in the duo lane. But they just execute so well on them that it's difficult to stop, and that's certainly the case for Rongyu's Yamoja. He's playing lights out so far.
Yeah, Rongyu lights out here in game 2. Panatom there for 100% of the kills so far. 3 out of 3, one of the kills landing there with him. Cubo Fred at least there on the assist for the one kill that Nico was able to get, but it still feels like Panatom controlling the pace of this game 6.5 minutes in, and even more so, even if you're not getting ganks, taking this Greater Scorpion for your team is going to open up the door to maybe an early Fury. It's been quiet, though, over here in the duo lane after Vote lost those beads, so luckily the Heimdall now safe enough. It'll be difficult for Panatom to find the gank. So, it's on Neil. Look, you got these early boots. You go back now, get the Starred item, building in towards that Thebes. Both supports in the same spot, item-wise, not level-wise, but you need to see the Sobek start to help set up for his team.
Did Julio get that blue buff? No way he did. Oh, man. So, see that just doesn't make any sense to me, though, Dave, because he doesn't have bead. They got them on the last blue buff invade. Fred has ult. Why is Julio allowed to walk up in range of that overhand slash? That he should just be getting gone on instantly. Or if they're worried about the rotation, I guess that makes some sense. If they want to just get the buff and get out, but think that you've got to come up with a better game plan than that coming into that play.
No buff is safe right now for the Oni Warriors. Leviathans ruthless on their invade attempts here. It's a River's Rebuke used early on from Rongyu, and the purple buff looks like it'll go down in favor of the Oni Warriors, and Cubo Fred will make his way to the red buff here as well. But you have to send everyone if you're the Oni Warriors to defend your buffs here. Panatom laughing about something. You can tell the vibes are good here in the Leviathans camp for good reason. Find themselves about 1,000 gold in the lead 8 minutes in. It's a continued scaling. So a different matchup from what we've seen here in the middle lane. You want to talk about scaling. Shinto already off to a 1-0-1 start. It's got to feel good here for the Leviathans because we know how much damage this Raijin can do with a little bit of extra gold.
And then he's going to be finishing off that Charon's coin that he's been going for soon. He does it right now. And he is at a very, very healthy spot in the damage department. Just based on base stats alone, that Raijin is going to get a lot of extra damage off. And Discordia really can't match that damage for quite some time. She's more about the teamfight utility and giving over that passive, number one. It's allowed Nika to bully Julio very effectively. Wukong with Disco passive is difficult to box up against no matter who you are. But right now, Shinto is just getting enough farm that he's gonna have to be priority number one come teamfight time. Otherwise, he can put out more damage than the Oni Warriors can handle.
That's a 2-level discrepancy in the mid lane. I mean, think back to game 1, right? It was level 20 for Shinto at one point to level 15 for Dardes. There's a 5-level gap somewhere up there in mid. So that's not a trend the Oni Warriors want to have continue here. It's not going to be a return blue buff invade for the Warriors. Instead, Panatom makes his way over, helps Julio pick up the blue buff. And the King Arthur will be able to do so. After that solo kill in game number 1, Julio stood up to the task, didn't he? I mean, it'd be very easy for a newcomer to go up against the likes of Nika. You get soloed out, you kind of let your mental get in the way, but it's been anything but from Julio. Had a great ending to game 1, great start here to game number 2 as Cubo Fred gets engaged on. Taiko drums for Shinto, will be just wide, finds some damage on the Cubo Fred, maybe sets up for a dive, but instead it's just the invade.
Yeah, they'll take the buff, and they'll be pretty happy with that outcome, though. Shinto losing the beads, maybe not quite as pleased about that. Probably wanted to hold on to those, because now Neil is one blink pluck away from shutting down this Raijin. No Aegis quite yet for Shinto. I'd imagine that he's going to back right now in order to try and pick that up. Otherwise, just pluck into Discordia Golden Apple is likely enough to kill him.
So Shinto feeling... I think he had to double back there to pick up the red buff officially. May have cost him his beads, but small moments that haven't made a massive impact just yet. We'll see if anyone on the Oni Warriors can take advantage of that in the next couple of minutes or so. Dardez finishes off the Divine Ruin. So feeling okay on this Discordia. Space Control is going to be the name of the game for Dardez here out of mid lane. Space Control the Oni Warriors will need around this Gold Furies. They've started it up, but I think that's just testing the reaction time of the Leviathans.
Yeah, no, they don't have a Sentry Ward there, but that's a, hey, I think that they've reset. Let's just try it, and we don't lose anything at all for not grabbing it. I like the idea from the Warriors. They're being active on the map at the very least, which is really more than we can say about what they did in game number 1. Seems like it just took them a little bit to warm up.
How about Soul Eater here, aggro for Nika? I mean, I know you rarely see Sun Wukong go full-on tank, or full-on damage for that matter. That makes some sense here. First item building into that hybrid build you assume later on.
There's not a lot of healing on the Oni Warriors, so immediately I like the Soul Eater more. I think it's at its worst, whatever teams are guaranteed to build anti-heal against you anyways, then you instantly lose that value. But just the base stats alone are exactly what Wukong wants. It's some damage, it's some health, it's some cooldown. You kind of get it all, and it makes it that much harder for them to take you down. The lifesteal doesn't matter to him very much, but it's more about that passive that he gets. Wukong just so hard to kill with his mobility and his displacement that even when he builds this way, it doesn't end up being that easy to take him down.
That's right, so Nika will look to take advantage of that. As this game starts to roll on, he's got the blink, so he wants to be aggressive early on in this game. And that's what we thought Cubo Fred might want to be as well. One level down to Panatom, though Panatom has slowed down pretty heavily from the early kill that we've seen here. Let's see if the Fenrir, in the next few minutes, aggro, can start to get something rolling here for his team. Granted, it's hard when the right side of the map hasn't been going flawlessly for your team, but Nika's got a 2-level lead, so maybe that's an area. The left side of the map has started to slow down a little bit after Panatom found some early pressure there. Though 5 sets of beads that are all off of cooldown maybe makes a jungler's life a little bit harder.
It does, but Neil's done a good job of getting those beads so far in this game. I think every set of beads that have been on cooldown nearly have been because of Neil, save for Shinto losing his to Dardez, and on the right-hand side when Julio lost his, I assume, to a Ragnarok. So those are going to be the moments that you're looking for as the game progresses, but so far, I mean, despite how much momentum it felt like the Leviathans had and how far ahead it felt like they were, there isn't a massive lead for them. I mean, this lead is now non-existent, actually, at least in gold.
It was 1,000 for a little while there, and no more. It's a River's Rebuke now from Wrong You. Cubo Fred actually gets riptided back a couple of times. Could that spell death? Not for the Fenrir, of course it does! How did the Leviathans ever miss that kill? And Cubo Fred makes the mistake of walking on the map anywhere near the Leviathans here. Wrong You hits the shots, so does Panatom. 3 ultimates used. But the Leviathans get a little of that gold, a little of that momentum back in their corner.
That's just unfair, what Wrong You did to Fred right there. He puts the Riptide down for the Unchained, gets interrupted. Then he brutalizes away and gets Riptided again. And now Neil is going to be caught because he doesn't have a blink because he got caught by Wrong You on the Umoja earlier on and forced it out. Ronnie's just looking too strong on this pick. And it's not going to get a whole lot easier for you either. Once you start grouping up, adding in all that extra damage from the rest of the squad on top of Wrong Yu's setup is going to make it difficult. I know that it's a hot title. You know, it's difficult to say for sure, but Wrong Yu's name is absolutely on the list for best Umojas in the league. He's right up there with the best of them.
Yeah, so we talk about supports that can and can't. I guess Wrong You at this point has proven that he can. You know, maybe he's just edged himself into that conversation a little bit here. At least in Game 2 and throughout the rest of the season so far as well. If there is one thing the Oni Warriors might feel good about, it's that Nika has about a 1,000 gold lead over his counterpart over there in the solo lane and a 2-level lead. So, the Leviathans 1,000 ahead. Could be worse, I guess. Could be 2,000 if Nika didn't hold the lead that he does, and that's why the Oni Warriors are going to send the Sun Wukong to the left, and the Oni Warriors will get the Gold Fury. massive here for the Oni Warriors. Remember, they checked last time, the Leviathans didn't. They did reply. This time the Warriors will walk in, and they'll take the Fury for free.
And it was close that from Yarkor stealing it away with that Desert's Fury. But I like the Warriors' willingness to take that 50-50. You know, if we just sit here and sit on our hands and do nothing, it's going to be a little bit too difficult to come back in this game. So even though it's a risk, and if we lose it, then the Leviathans pull even further ahead, and we're feeling really bad about the call. Just being active is something that I think this team has struggled with a little bit at times. So I appreciate that for sure. Now it's got to be going back to farming, specifically for Fred, who's down a full level and a half right now for Panatom. Exactly like we were talking about in Game 1. Fred has really struggled to find his footing so far in Season 8.
Man, Panatom's got a pretty high damage build going for himself here as well on the Susano. Any of these squishy targets on the Oni Warriors get caught out. Death sentence. I mean, look, first blood. Panatom had just like an item and a half, maybe, counting his boots in his back pocket, and it felt like Vote didn't stand any chance there, so it's just going to get worse. And we'll see if Panatom can flex that strength a little bit here. Dardes takes the red buff, blink through. Panatom gets beads out on the engage, but closes that gap well. Typhoon flies through, and who cares if Dardes hits everything? Panatom wins that engagement, has to use beads and blink. He might still survive, and Panatom's out alive.
Cuvo's here and on top of Rongyu and doing no damage at all. In fact, Rongyu is the one winning the trade up against the jungler. Sunder sends him away because he would have lost that fight.
Wow, and now it's a purple buff for the Leviathans. Vote close by, but this is a 2v1. Neil can't rotate over. Rivers Rebuke down. Vote ults off to the side. Riptide once more connects onto Vote. The Aegis used here. Bifrost down, but purple buff already stolen away. Neoma rotates in, Rongyu sustaining himself up, so nothing to push back on here for the Oni Warriors. It does feel like a cheat code at this point. Rongyu just keeps hitting these Riptides. Vote had to use Aegis there and the ultimate in order to keep himself on the map.
Just love the aggressiveness from this jungle support duo. Rongyu and Panatom have really just been gunning themselves around the map the last 3 matches. You know, it was Game 2 up against the Dragons where they were doing it. Last game they did it, and now they're doing it again. This time on picks that don't necessarily synergize for free, but because why not when you're doing things like this?
A couple body blocks land onto Neoma, and the lurking in the waters will keep him alive as Rongyu sent the stuns flying. It's Dardes considering a rotation to the left side of the map on this Discordia, but he'll stick over towards mid alongside Cuvo Fred, who is doing his best to keep pace, but if anything, the level gap is drawn wider out of this jungle matchup. 2 levels now for Panatom. It was about a level and a half here before. Though in the solo lane, things have been consistent aggro. Nika with a 2-level lead over Julio, but the Oni Warriors haven't really found a way to leverage that just yet, outside of what was a good Gold Fury pull.
No, but they haven't needed to. I mean, again, it's the Leviathans with all of this momentum because they're winning every single little scrap. But it hasn't amounted to a massive lead in gold yet. The experience is concerning, no doubt, especially in jungle and mid. But it doesn't take that long to catch up in that department once your opposition has hit 20. Once they can't gain any more experience, you end up catching up fairly quickly the vast majority of the time. The pace of this game has been pretty slow, and that has favored the Warriors despite having a much better early game composition than what they had last time. Because Leviathans just have had so much momentum and they've won every skirmish, the fact that they aren't taking that many skirmishes is good news for the Order side.
That's right, so something the Oni Warriors can lean on. As Julio closes the level gap to 1 here. Oracle is going to get taken now by the Leviathans. Fury just a minute or so away. So Cuvo Fred right back on to farming up on this Fenrir pick. It's the targets later on that are really going to matter here for the Oni Warriors. Shinto in particular is going to be a problem alongside Panatom. Julio finds an engage onto Neoma, and then the follow-up stun from Rongyu forces Neil into the ultimate. Nika
Not that way.
is here to stay. In the Rivers Rebuke he goes, and Shinto will pick up the kill onto the Sobuk. Up and over and out goes Nika, but it looks like the Leviathans have got what they came for, though a little more chase happening. The Riptide sends a few in. But it's a double stun from Cuvo Fred. Panatom brutalized down by Cuvo Fred, and finally a kill on the board for the Fenrir. Make it 2. Cuvo's got a double.
That's exactly what the doctor ordered for the Oni Warriors. They get caught, and it was really just the Leviathans getting way too greedy in trying to chase it down. They can't leave here. I was going to say, it looks like they're starting to back up. They can't, because this is going to be a fire pool from the Warriors.
Wow, Julio and Shinto are here immediately. Yarkor looking towards the Oni Fury. It's going to be a steal or nothing now for the Leviathans, and they will steal it away. The Atlantis Leviathans get the big objective, and Julio might make it out alive as well. Could turn around the damage onto Cubo Fred. It's a conduit gem proc from Shinto that ends up getting the objective. Oh, and Oni Fury as well on the left-hand side. To go, please, for the Leviathans.
Just no secure here for the Oni Warriors. It's really not on them to lose that objective overall. If no one can get on top of Shinto, you understand that you're coin flipping it. And you just got to hope that your secure beats theirs. I don't mind the call. It's risky for sure, but that was the only window of hope that you've had basically all game. And you just got to give credit where it's due. To Shinto making a play, to Julio for getting in there and giving him vision. That's so critical on steals like that, to have someone in the pit so you could actively track the HP instead of just trying to guess it over the wall. I don't think that there's a whole lot the Oni Warriors could have done differently there, except to hope your abilities time a little bit better next time around.
Well, fingers crossed for the Oni Warriors and the Oni Warriors fans. The base defense looks good here. We are 22 minutes into this game, and it's a stolen Fire Giant and then a good Oni Fury call from Yarkor there that makes all the difference here. The Oni Waves have been dealt with, so that's at least one breath of fresh air now that the Oni Warriors can breathe. As a Tier 2 tower being looked at, Oni Warriors may be feeling confident enough aggro in defending their Tier 2 on the left side, though maybe you just show some face and back away when the trying gets tough. But that's not what Neil wants, and instead Neil finds his way into the Rivers Rebuke. How many times have we seen this play out? And Neil will go down, and it's Wrongu who grabs the kill. Vote sends one flying with his ultimate here. Apple connects onto Shinto in the backline, and an Aegis will keep the Raijin up in this fight for a little while. Nika in onto Panatom, and the Sun Wukong nets a kill.
And they needed that. Nika not done either. He's going to keep on going. No blink for him, but he doesn't need it. Closes the gap onto Julio. The matter is if the rest of the team can close the gap with this Wukong.
Wow, the tug of war continues as the Leviathans suddenly pushing back towards the Oni Warriors. Vote does not have any of his relics available, so if Wrongu lands a stun, there's going to be swift follow-up here from the rest of the Leviathans. Cubo, Fred, and Nika alone on the backline here. Now it's Nika that gets engaged upon it. How about that damage from Shinto, huh? Nika, not feeling comfortable with the way things are, will bull his way out of this fight, but the DOT from the MID of the Leviathans gets the kill. Julio with another, and these slow individual picks making the Oni Warriors pay.
One by one, the Ants go marching in, and one by one, they get squished by the Atlantis Leviathans. 4 dead now.
Tier 2!
Shinto looking to make it a deicide. Shinto all the way in the base, all by himself. And there's no shot he kills Neil here. But here's the deal, Dave. It doesn't matter if he's got no shot to kill that Sobek, because he and the rest of the Leviathans can go wherever they damn well please.
Well, look, there's 20 seconds on the nearest respawn here. They don't have Panatom, so some Titan damage is off the map. Julio turns his eyes back towards the base, but it looks like the rest of the Leviathans are going to stand strong in their mental here, and they'll back away. How about this from the Leviathans? What a showing to start off this Sunday in the SPL. Up 4-12 in kills. Up now 6,000 gold. Fire Giant will fall off here in the next 30 seconds. They get the left side Phoenix, the best one to have. The Oni Warriors are going to need a miracle play around an FG in order to come back in this game.
I think the big problem here that I'm seeing for the Warriors, Dave, is that the great teams in the league, the best teams at the top of the SPL, they operate as if they're of one mind. They move as one forward, they peel back as one, they interchange, they time their retreats and engages for different tanks at the same time. And that just isn't quite there yet for the Warriors. They seem a little bit scattered. They aren't all on that same page. And that's why when teams like the Camelot Kings look that way, I'm surprised and impressed, because they haven't had that same amount of time together as other squads. The Leviathans are working that way very well right now. They understand what their teammates are capable of very well.
Yep.
And we're not talking about what their gods can do necessarily, but just in each decision point, what that player is likely to end up doing. The Warriors are a little bit frazzled. They're a little bit separated still in those high-tension moments, whereas the Leviathans, have not looked frazzled at all so far here
Nope.
today. This has been clean smite from them.
I think we've given this Oni Warriors team kind of a Phase 2 timetable in order to work out some of those issues where this Leviathans team, if they can continue to grow at their current rate, will be a force to reckon with. They already are a force to be reckoned with, but continue to get scarier as this phase goes on. Fire Giant will respawn here, 5 minutes away from Enhance, so we're not dealing with that just yet if we're the Oni Warriors. Julio's going to separate here. The Fire Giant immediately pulled out, but Julio pulled as well in the back line. It's an engage on a Cubo Fred, who has to dash away. A 1v1 between junglers forces out the ultimate from Cubo Fred. No more Ragnarok to engage here in this fight, and the Fire Giant's reset.
Shinto just keeps on dashing in. The thing that I'm noticing about the Leviathans is they are really, really itching for the fight around this Fire Giant for the second game in a row. They seem very hesitant to actually do the objective itself, and I think the Warriors are starting to play around that nicely. They're forcing the Leviathans to take extra damage, and then coming in later than most of their teams would be willing to engage upon you on.
Julio gets plucked again, but Neilma has to go lurking in the waters once more. We've seen this defensively from Neil a few too many times, I think, for his liking so far this game. So now Neilma doesn't have his ultimate, Cubo Fred doesn't have his ultimate, and the Leviathans have all 5. It's a Fire Giant pulled once more. Neilma's going to have to get it done with a pluck this time, but River's Rebuke barely inched away from Neilma, but has that bought enough space for the Fire Giant to be completed? Nika tries to get within steel range. Somersault Cloud up and over for the Sun Wukong. Wrong use ult, the only one used now on the Leviathans. The Oni Warriors continue to delay out the big objective.
So these things are good for the Warriors to go in and pull them off fire, but it's this tank's ult, now this tank's ult, now this tank's ult.
That's going to be it there.
And they don't end up committing with the rest of the squad.
Finally, the Leviathans with that advantage aggro able to take down the Fire Giant. Julio alone beneath the tier 2 tower here. Shinto sending some barrels around the side. Connects for half of Dardez's HP, but Shinto, he's alone here, uses the beads, doesn't have to use the Aegis, and he'll dash away to safety. Fire minions dealt with on the left-hand side. Vote wasn't there at the end of that FG. Fire minions maybe for 1 or 2 more waves before the Phoenix respawns, but that means the Leviathans have an early chance to get in onto this Phoenix here. Nika eats a lot of damage there from Panatom as the Phoenix rounds down beneath half HP. Dardez looking for a Strife, maybe an Apple, to set up on a fight.
Yeah, no Apple quite yet, though, Dave. I agree that he wants it, but doesn't have it available to him.
Doesn't have it.
It has 30% CDR, so it won't be long until it's back up, but he doesn't have it now.
Whoa, Panatom takes a lot of damage here. Yarkor, wrong you, same for them. Julio on the left-hand side of this fight, whirling away onto Neomon. Brutalize connects onto Julio, but a defensive Riptide for once from Rongyu keeps his solo laner in the fight. Remember in game 1, saw a decent defense from the Oni Warriors around their Phoenix. Maybe more of the same here in game number 2. It's half HP on both left and right Phoenix, but a bit of a pump fake now from the Leviathans could buy him enough time to get the damage in.
Yeah, this is a good idea here from the Leviathans. They have so much sustain courtesy of the Emoja, they might as well.
Neil here on the left-hand side. Nika is in as well onto the Somersault Cloud. Cubo Fred's alone on the left-hand side of the map here. So it's a 5v4 for the time being. Yarkor whittling away the health bar of this Phoenix, and it's a stun onto Neil, and Shinto rampaging now in game number 2. The rest of the Leviathans as well. Now the gates have been opened. Vote with the Aegis, the beads, and the ultimate stays alive, but he doesn't have much more. No more wind to finish out this game for the Oni Warriors. The Leviathans are backing away, the Titan under attack, and the Leviathans won't go for it just yet.
Not quite yet. They just don't have the ultimates available. That was 3 used by the Leviathans, but well worth the trouble, I'd say. They crack that right side Phoenix. Left side Phoenix is up and respawn, but will permanently be weakened and very easy for the Leviathans to go back in for. Taking advantage of the 5v4 a little bit more than I thought they would. I thought they might just back and reset. They should have a good amount of golden hand from this point to be able to step up and finish off some of those last items. Yeah, 2,300 for the poorest member of the Leviathans. Not exactly feeling too bad for Rogyu in that spot.
Nah, 3K for the richest member of the Leviathans. What does this come down to here, Aggro, in your mind for the Oni Warriors? We've long established that this is going to require some sort of either individual or miraculous team play to keep this game alive. What's the most realistic avenue for the Oni Warriors to find this defense?
Man, I don't know, Dave. I just watched Shinto and Yarkor
None
buy
is
3K
realistic.
potions, so I'm not feeling great about the Oni Warriors options. I mean, you've got Neil's done a good job coming into that Phoenix fight. Both Yarkor and Shinto didn't have beads, but Fred was busy pushing out left, so he wasn't there in order to punish them. The problem is that they both have CC immune ults in addition to those purification beads. I'm looking at what the option is now for the Leviathans, or on the Leviathans as potential targets. It's really only Panatom, and he's got a Magi's. His beads are down for 30, so they might be here. You might be able to get the Magi's off and then immediately pick him up. If you can insta-kill Panatom, you make your life significantly easier, but he's going to likely be able to get a lot of his damage off before he falls. And if he does even that, that's likely enough to win the fight.
Neoma first in, it's the blink, but how many times have we seen this? The Rivers
no.
Rebuke, inch perfect from Rongyu, and it is once more Neoma down, 0-5 for the Sobek. Vote, no HP to be seen. Nika extends his life just a little longer, but the Leviathans finishing off this game with what looks like will be a deicide. Leviathans in 31 minutes take the set.
And that fight couldn't have been any easier, and you know why? It's because of Rongyu's Umoja, man. Enough is enough. The man did too much. This game was the Rongyu show. Panatom did great work. Shinto, of course, came into the late game and absolutely dominated every single team fight with his damage and his positioning. But the reason that the Leviathans get so far ahead and make it look so easy is because Rongyu went absolutely off on that Umoja pick.
Yeah, 32,000 damage, nothing to scoff at from Shinto either. And let's not forget where this early game started. Panatom on the Susano all over the place, right through those first 3 kills of this game. Slowed down a little bit, but just felt like Cuvo Fred couldn't match the pace of the Leviathan jungler today.
No, and that's really been the problem for the Warriors. That mid 3v3 core has yet to really gel, I think, between Fred's struggles and Dardez not looking like himself. Again, we understand their situation. They're both playing from Europe on tough ping. I get that, but still expected a little bit more. And I think it's fair to expect a little bit more out of that mid 3v3 core. The side laners in this game, Yarkor and Julio, really didn't have to do that much realistically because the 3v3 in mid was going so well for the Leviathans.
Neil playing on ping as well, but ping only separates so much. I mean, look, the Sobek went in, lurking in the waters, and it was an instant Rivers Rebuke every single time. Neil just didn't really have a chance here in this game. If you're still an Oni Warriors fan after this one, which I imagine all of you are, go to Insight Apparel Company or shop.smiteproleague.com, furnished by the Insight Apparel Company. Grab a pretty sweet jersey here. One of the SPL teams surely is your favorite now at this point, or if they're all your favorite, pick up 8 different jerseys. Once again, that's Insight Apparel Company. Shop.smiteproleague.com is where you'll want to head. The first set of the day is in the books. That means we'll head to a break, and then the desk will break it down.
Welcome back to the SPL, powered by Alienware. And once more, we'd like to give them a shout out for partnering with us to help bring Season 8 to you all. And I think they did a pretty good job of that, I would think, here at this point. Make sure you go check out their products, give them a follow on all their social at Alienware, and join their global community as well. Maybe get some giveaways, upgrade your own gear, make everything better. Lots of cool stuff could potentially be there for you. Even make sure you use code SMITE8W. I took a look at the code down there, SMITE8W. Pick that one up, guys, and make things a little better for you at home. Now, Gore, we still have to talk a little bit about how the Leviathans just seem to be able to beat anyone they want to that isn't named the Dragons, and sounds like their sights are set on the Dragons as well. They take care of the Warriors while they're in their way, but we know what their ultimate goal is here at this point, is to get to that spot and prove that they can be the #1 team. Here in this game, though, there was a little bit of fight back from the Warriors. They still got behind early, but they found some windows to try and find some avenues in. They started up an FG. That gets taken by the Leviathans. Eventually, they have their will to fight taken. The Leviathans find the 2-0.
Yeah, and the way the first game had a lot of back and forth, but it was kind of kills based, this one was a little more objective based in the same back and forth, but it was still ultimately always leading to the Leviathans somehow still being ahead, still winning objectives off the back of things, in one case literally stealing and stripping one away. And I think it all comes down to, I mean, early on, the Susano, Panatom just looked really good on it. He was able to go, I think at 3-0 was when I started like really logging it in my brain that he was making a big difference for them, but he was incredibly impactful on this pick, and that translated very well for them into the late game. I mean, several times following people in appropriate ways. I mean, straight up just dunking on Dardes at his own red buff, like little moments that theoretically, like on its own, that play doesn't do anything, but it's because of the space it creates and what the team does with it, which is always what the Leviathans are good at, that it turns it around. And of course, the one time that it felt like the Warriors were able to kind of pull something back in their favor, Shinto had to just say no and leave afterward. It felt so good from him. If that Fire Giant goes a different way, I think we're having a different conversation and the Warriors look a lot better in game number 2, but I mean, that one, it's just disheartening when you get hit by that.
Doesn't feel good, does it? As Wrong Yu is allowed to play what has become his characteristic Yamoja, perhaps the best that we have at this elite pickup, the support role, and makes it look dominant yet again. I mean, every time it is that this team is able to win the Leviathans, it is because they make it look like a team effort. Shinto has a monster performance, 6-0-9, but that is enabled by what Panatom and Rongyu did around him. A little bit of pressure still for Julio over there in solo. That's something I've been noticing. Gore kind of looks like this Leviathans team is just going to let him kind of handle things on his own. Even if he ends up a little bit behind, they'll trust he'll come to the team fight and still find some impact, even up against someone as strong as Nika in that solo lane. The rest of the Oni Warriors, though, couldn't quite get it going. Only 7k damage there from Cuvo Fred. That's about the same. A little less even than what Wrongyu output on that Yamoja. They've got to find some ways, I'm thinking, this Warriors team to start consistently finding ways to deal with early pressure and with these late-game team fights. They've been struggling in those against just about everyone they face so far.
I mean, I can't count how many times like we would see Cuvo. Essentially, he had to use that Ragnarok never for engage. I feel like every time we saw it, it was to get out of there, to try and stay alive a little bit longer. Most of the time that worked to his favor, but he was never able to apply the pressure, and I think that's exemplified by the fact that Shinto literally didn't die in those 2 games. He was able to go with a perfect streak throughout all of that, and to me, it just makes me excited for what the Leviathans are going to be able to do in the future. I know a lot of people are talking like Leviathans versus Dragons because that is kind of the big matchup. But, I'm going to roll it back a little bit. Last week, I believe it was, is when we saw them go against the Kings and it goes 3 games. I want to see that rematch because right now the Dragons do feel like they're dominating. I want to know who is going to really, really win that second place slot. And that, I think, next time when the Kings have a little more under their belt, it's going to be a lot closer.
Yeah, I want to see that one too. Let's go ahead and take a look then at the schedule. We're on the tail end of things. It's all 2-0s throughout the entirety of the week so far. Maybe Scarabs and Kings can change that up for us, get us to a 3rd game. I think at this point in the season, Kings likely should be a little favored in that one, kind of the top card in that one. The Scarabs were the challengers, but that's not to say that I don't think this will be close. Scarabs could certainly take the Kings here and find themselves a nice win to improve from their current 1-3 record. The Kings would love to grab a 3rd win and move up there where the Bolts are to their spot, though, and continually get closer to that top spot. It's become a really tough matchup here so far in the SBL, man. It has become really close at the bottom, and then breaking through to the top is looking really, really difficult for those who are not close enough just yet. But Gore, At this point, we've got to talk a little bit about what our man Dolson has waiting for us. He is standing by for Mother's Day with his mother. So maybe we go over there to Dolson, see how that interview's looking.
Mom, you got me? Can you hear me on that side of the camera? I can kind of hear you. Maybe pick up the phone, and this is fantastic. This is great. Move it closer to your face. Can I hear you now? Oh, that's perfect. I can hear you. I can hear you great now, Mom. First of all, happy Mother's Day. Happy to have you here. Nan Olson. I think you can see your lower third down there. All right, Mom. I prepared a couple questions for you here today for Mother's Day. First off, between my older brother Kyle, me, and my younger sister Elizabeth, who is your favorite child, and why is it me?
Oh, Dave. I knew you'd have a question like that.
Yep. And
you know,
the answer?
a mom's heart has room for all.
Oh, my God. All right, Mom, look, I know you don't want me moving back into home, so let's not do such a good job that you take my job here. Okay, this is an easy one for you. Do you love Ramsey, your grand dog, more than you love me?
Well, Dave, you know I love you, but I don't know if you can see this girl. There she is.
Wait, you guys got a picture of Ramsey put up at the... All right, fair enough. You're right. Ramsey's hard not to love. What do you want for Mother's Day, Mom? What do you want for Mother's Day?
Just to be with my family. Can't wait to see you all in a little bit.
That's right. I'll be home for dinner here in a little while. Do you know, though, this is a true test of an Olsen. A couple more questions, this one and then one more. What type of chair is the best type of chair?
Dave, here's the great thing about being a mom is that you always learn from your kids all the way along from when they're little.
You do.
So one thing I've learned from you, Maxonomic for your rear, Alien for your gear.
Wait, who wrote that? I don't know. Honest to God stream, I did not write that. So whoever came up with that, fantastic. One final thought from you here, Mom. Any messages for the moms out there for Mother's Day?
Well, just lots of love to all the moms. Remember to take care of yourself while you're taking care of everybody else. But Dave, I have a final thought, if I may.
God, okay. Yeah, you may.
I was gonna share this with you when you come over later, but I think probably now is the best time. It's a little ditty I wrote for you.
Oh my God, Mom!
There was a boy named Dave Olson, known as Dig Dog, long before he was Dolson. He's the middle of three. Affable was he, and he grew up all kind of wholesome. One day he said, "Mom, my calling I found. Casting for SMITE is the way. You go on then, sweet son. We'll cheer you along and tune in to see you each day." Love you, Dave.
God. All right, look. I refuse to cry on the internet, so Mom, I love you. I'll see you guys in a little bit for dinner. Thanks for taking the time, sitting down with me for the post-game interview. Happy Mother's Day to you. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Quick break from our end. I'm going to go wipe these tears away. We'll be back for set 2.